Welcome to live email optimization with the pros. This is one of the most requested sessions at Litmus Live every year, so we're all excited to have you. I'm Danielle Gallant, and I will be your host for today's session. And we have an absolutely amazing lineup for you today. So, joining me are two of our internal email experts and my fellow professional services team members, Julie Stuck and Megan Farquharson. Plus, we are delighted to have one of the top email developers in the industry with us to help optimize. Mark Robbins, who is a developer advocate at Customer IO. And just a fun fact for everybody, this is Mark's 11th Litmus Live appearance. So he is definitely a veteran when it comes to all things email coding. Today, we are going to bring decades of coding knowledge and real world email consulting experience to help make your emails even better. And as the title of this session suggests, we'll be doing live email optimizations. So we're going to take 3 actual emails that have been submitted by you all and walk through how to improve them in real time. We will focus on accessibility best practices, proper email structure, CTA, do's and don'ts. So whether you have joined us today to sharpen your coding skills, improve accessibility, or just pick up some practical tips from the pros, you are in the right place. We have a lot to get through today. So let's go ahead and dive right in. You're stuck with me still to talk about the first email. We are going to start with the Envision newsletter from VSP. So this email, just to set the scene a little bit, is designed to encourage vision care members to utilize their benefits, help them get the most out of their coverage, educate readers on the importance of eye health and its connection to overall health, entertain, grow enrollment into VSP, and retain existing members. And all of this is trying to be accomplished in this email while driving VSP website traffic. So just before we dive in, I think a lot of people who are joining us today know that newsletter emails are really trust-driven. They typically read like a roundup instead of like a promo. From a design perspective, they're also usually designed for scanning as opposed to a single conversion point. And this is a classic example of like a relationship newsletter. And it's doing a lot right, and we're going to get into it. But the biggest opportunity is not really changing the format, but clarifying priority, reducing friction, and making the click feel unmistakably worthwhile and accessible. That's where we're going to pull Mark in. And this submission asked for a lot of feedback on everything from content strategy to branding efficacy. And let's start with content strategy. So one of the questions that we got related to this email was, should we shorten the content or use teaser copy to encourage clicks? Now, I personally think this email does a really good job of teasing content. There's an example, I know it's small, but there's a block that says, protect your eyes this cold season, here's what you need to know. Phrasing like that is really quick and lightweight, and it makes the click the completion of the thought. However, as you might expect with a newsletter, there is a lot of content and offers, right? So if the email is lengthy, which it is, especially on mobile, we need to really emphasize elements that subscribers find engaging. So in terms of optimizing this, if the engagement data shows uneven click distribution, there's a really strong case here for testing like a digest version of this message that prioritizes the highest performing modules. Another opportunity here to improve digestibility is featuring like with like content within a block on desktop. So for example, the example that's up on the slide here is find a doctor next to find a location. In the current version of the email, there's kind of like a diagonal split between sales offers and location finding. So that might just help improve clarity when scrolling. Mark, I want to pull you in here. Tell us a little bit about the file size and what optimization opportunities lie there.
Yeah, so this email is pretty weighty in terms of file size. It's 141.6 kilobytes. So that's going to clip in Gmail. Anything over 102 kilobytes will get clipped in Gmail. So you won't see the bottom part of the email, which is not ideal. Also, that can affect deliverability, and it slows down sending. If you're sending out a million emails and they're all 141 kilobytes. 141 is not a lot of kilobytes, but scale it up a million times it is. If you can reduce that down a lot, it's going to be a big saving. And environmentally, storage is a thing that we think about a bit more about sustainability. So large emails take up more storage and disk space. But using a few very simple Minify and CSS cleanup tools, it's not removing any bits of the code. It's just cleaning them up. It's removing some things that are unused, like classes, but it's just cleaning everything up and just removing spaces mostly. So that bring it down to 68.1 kilobytes. That's a huge saving just with a couple of tools that you can run on the code there. But also there are some things within the code itself. So we can jump onto the next slide. Um, there's 212 tables in this code, which is a lot. I tend to recommend people use sort of 10 to 15 in an email, which is quite extreme for most people when I say that, but that's what I like to aim for. But uh, looking through the code, there's a lot of these tables are doing nothing. Like there's the little code block I've got there, this table width 100%, no border, no padding, no cell spacing, align center. So the only thing doing anything there is the align center. That could be done with a text line on a div, which is a lot less code. Um, Additionally, we've got a number of attributes that are being added into the code. So I've got these two code blocks at the top there. The bottom of the two, it has all these extra attributes on, like on the link, we've got alias, we've got conversion, we've got data linked to. These are all part of the ESP. I think it's to do with link tracking, and they're needed for that, for building the email and constructing and building the link tracking. But actually, when the email's sent, those are doing nothing. So
Mm.
it's more of a feature request to the ESP to forward on to your ESP rather than something for people to be doing in-house. But getting those cleaned up before send is just going to lighten the email. And there's a few other bits on that. You see the top piece of code there is the cleaned up version. So I've moved the font size and the color all onto the A tag and removed the title attribute as well, because that's bad from an accessibility point of view.
That is so interesting. And I'm seeing comments in the chat too around just how many emails get clipped at Gmail that people actually see. So we're optimizing this email, but this is broadly applicable. So everybody check your emails for
And I
Yes,
also
spam.
saw
absolutely.
one person asking about, if this includes images, and I just want to that this is just looking at the HTML file size. So this, Mark, if you want to talk to that more, but it's just this the file size doesn't include the image weight.
Yeah, this is just the HTML and it's just the HTML MIME type. So it's not including the plain text version or the AMP version. The clipping is just on that HTML version that we're looking at.
Thank you for that, Megan and Mark. That's awesome. All right, let's get into CTAs. So, when the submission came in, there were requests for suggestions on wording, design, and placement to drive engagement. This is the evergreen question from pretty much every marketer that I think we've all worked with. Now, the CTAs are definitely plentiful and they're action oriented, so there's strong alignment to like real member benefit tasks like benefit options, doctors, savings. But I think that when I take a look at this, my immediate gut reaction is that too many CTAs share equal visual weight here. And when we think about that, what that really means is equal visual weight means equal perceived priority. So if two buttons are the same size, color, style, and in this case, pretty much all of the calls to action within the email are the same size, color, style, the reader has to do that prioritization work for us. And we have a limited attention window to work with here. So even in a newsletter, creating some sort of CTA hierarchy is recommended. So this can look like inverting the colors, so having a white color and then the blue kind of circle around that actual CTA button. That will help establish primary versus secondary actions within each section. Julie, Megan, what do you think? Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit too much of the same, so I'm not really sure where to focus.
Definitely.
And my initial thought when I saw the email is, yeah, it's a lot of call to actions, but also they're kind of tiny for people for an audience with visual impairments because they need glasses. I'm sure you'll talk about call to actions later, but that was my first thought.
Yeah, and I want to talk about placement next, actually. Now, there are lots of calls to action, as we've said, but what really actually stood out to me immediately was how subscribers would see this preview pane of this message within the native Mail app on an Apple device. So, just as a reminder for everybody, after iOS 18, viewers are seeing just what's called a digest view when they are looking at an email on the native Mail app, and that can be any email address. There's not a lot of space there. The hero image would undoubtedly take up the entirety of that preview pane and that digest view, and the CTA, or at least the primary CTAs, not the navigation CTAs that are right up at the top there, fall below that preview pane. That's not always the worst thing, but it does limit impulsive clicks on that primary CTA. And really the text also that's kind of introducing the tips that the email contains. So consider minimizing that hero image if possible, just so that we can up the placement for that primary CTA. I do want to stop on wording and language for the CTAs too, because this is a question we get a lot. The first and primary CTA is get started. The intro line is about 5 tips that the subscriber is going to learn about within the message itself. So, do we think the CTA should align with that? Julie, Megan, what do you think? What do you think about generic CTA language in general?
Well, I am apparently still off mute, so I'll go first. Um, I think the primary CTA needs to align. I think generic is okay if the content really explains what the user should expect when they take that action. But for me personally, I much prefer like a more explicit instruction. Tell me what to do, schedule my eye exam rather than just, book now kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely agree with that. As long as the content leading to the call to action makes it clear what the call to action is, then you can keep it a little simpler. But as much clarity as you can get with call to actions is always better. Just finding a happy medium so your call to action isn't like a paragraph.
Agreed. And to be fair to VSP in this email, there are some pretty specific calls to action within this email. Find a doctor, find a location. But we're talking about
Mhm.
that primary one there. We want to be a little bit specific there. Mark, you've got some feedback on the actual CTA structure for coding, I think, too.
Yes. So there's a couple of things coming in here. Firstly, it's all caps, which is fine from a design point of view, but from a code point of view, if you write it as all caps, a screen reader might come across that link, and instead of reading "get started," it'll read GETSTR. You start spelling it out. So that's not as useful. So you can just do a bit of CSS, text transform uppercase, and that will make it all caps, but you don't write it in the as all caps. Um, Another thing that there are title attributes on the CTAs. That best case scenario that does nothing, but it might again when a screen reader hits that, it can read it twice. So it'll be get started, get started. So again, not ideal. So remove that again. You're removing file size as well when you're taking those title tags off, which is good. But the main thing, which is something I see quite a lot, and it's a still pet peeve of mine, is links aren't fully clickable. So if you see the sort of little illustration I've got there, the dark blue piece in the middle around the text, if you click on that, it will take you through to the landing page. If you click on any of the blue around it, it does nothing. So it's the way that the it's coded, the button's coded. It's generally my advice is always put the styling directly on the A tag or elements inside the A tag and not on things around it. Because if it's on anything around it, that isn't clickable. It's only the clickable element we want to style, I guess. Yeah.
Super interesting. I do also want to touch on layout and hierarchy, really asking, does the structure highlight the most important actions clearly? We've already talked about visual competition within the calls to action, which might prevent users from understanding which sections are most important very easily. But newsletters benefit from momentum cues, especially when they're long. So, momentum cues, like an arrow, for example, we have a member benefit section in this email, something like more member only savings below with an arrow, these can reduce scroll abandonment in longer emails. So that might be something interesting to test if you're reworking this newsletter. It just signals that there is more value ahead and keeps the readers going on through. Now, branding. We always want to make sure that branding is prominent, strong, consistent, and it is really clear and prominent here in this template. The color palette is consistent, but I do want to mention, just in case the sender hasn't implemented this, BIMI, VMC, Apple branded mail, all different terms that mean the logo is showing up within the subscriber inbox. So before they even have to open the message, they can see your brand. Inbox branding is now part of the subscriber experience. So the email doesn't start necessarily when someone opens it. It actually starts in the inbox. It's not within the email itself, though it will be, but it takes up a huge amount of real estate, again, especially in that native mail app that we were talking about before.
Danielle, I would argue that it's not only part of the user experience, but it's part of the expectation anymore.
It is mind-blowing how few senders, really huge brands that don't have
Mm.
BIMI in place. And it is just this amazing opportunity to get your logo out there, brand visibility. BIMI itself is free, that one, and so is Apple branded mail, at least for now. So that is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Thank you, Julie. Personalization, the question that comes up every time. I do want to touch on that too, but I'm going to throw this to Mark actually, because a huge part of making sure that the email is personalized means having it display appropriately for the user specific device and making sure that accessibility standards are in place. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on responsiveness and accessibility coding for
So,
this email?
so yeah, for this, from a responsive point of view, this email is 700 pixels wide, which is it's quite wide, but that's good. That's fine. It's still sort of within a sensible range. Um, and it is responsive. There is a breakpoint to shrink it down, but that breakpoint is 480 pixels. So if you're looking at this in the little preview I've got at the top there, as 481 pixels. You still see the desktop view. You've got those horizontal scroll bars. So anywhere between 480 and 700 pixels, you're going to have a horizontal scroll, which is just a horrible user experience, and
Mm.
it's very disjointed trying to read it. So the simple fix for this, very easy, is just change that 480 to 700, and the email instantly looks so much better. It's generally, I'd say, ideally, if you really want to push it, switch to a spongy layout, so that will reduce in size without media queries, but that's a bigger code overhaul. So the quick fix is to use like just updates the media queries to match the width of the email on that.
That's awesome. And I think we have one more slide here, maybe two.
Oh yeah, and again, font size. As this is a vision care brand, I think I loved the big text at the top, very big, bold, easy to read, well spaced out text. That was great. Then you go down to the footer and it's 9 pixels, which is unreadable. Generally, I usually recommend at least 14 pixels for small text or 16 pixels minimum for body text. I can be convinced to go down to 12 pixels, but I think particularly for a vision brand, I think 14 should be the minimum. I think going below that is going to be a bit of a stretch. And also scaling on this, there's the meta viewport adjusts blocks the scaling or adjusts what scaling is allowed. So when you pinch and zoom on the screen, or you can zoom in, which is very useful, particularly if you have vision issues. This is within the WCAG recommendations. It has got maximum scale 2 on there, which is allowed, but generally, like, why limit it? I'd say remove that maximum scale and just allow it people to go all the way up to 10. It's generally recommended. 5 is often recommended, but 2 is the WCAG minimum. But yeah, remove it, and then you've got all the scaling you want, and it just makes it so much easier to navigate and read.
That is awesome.
And then, yeah, a few missing attributes. So role presentation, on tables. A lot of the tables don't have that. If the table doesn't have role presentation or role none on there, it's treated as a data table, and then screen readers and assistive technology will treat it as data rather than just as content. So tables are used as a hack, and it's a nasty, horrible hack that we have to use sometimes in email. But this is not a tabular data. This is just content. So adding role presentation or role none on there will just fixes that. Presentation or none, exactly the same thing. It's just it was renamed in the spec, but both of them work currently. So use whichever. And also adding inside the content, inside the body on the main wrapper of the content, add a language and a direction attribute. So lang and dir for language and direction. Because email clients often will just take the content out of the body and you'll remove all the head and everything. So if you've got this set higher up, which is more what you're doing web, you'll put it on the HTML tag. Those get removed when it's rendered in email. And this can be quite, particularly the direction can really mess with the rendering. So if I've got an email client that's in a right to left language and I receive an email in left to right language,
Hmm.
that's going to inherit the language direction and it's going to really mess the layout around. So just adding that in, very small bit of code, just something that wraps the whole content. It can be a div or a table or whatever it is, wrapping the whole content and add those in. And it just then the language as well helps with screen readers and translation tools.
Mark, we are so glad you are here
Yes.
to get into this nitty-gritty for us. And I think we can hop to the next.
Yeah. This
We've
one's
got
mine.
one email down, two to go. Julie, you are up next.
This one is mine. The submission is from the Matheny Arts Access. What the program is based on, it's designed to inspire, uplift, and encourage the aspirations of artists with disabilities. And I just love that. So important for inclusion, right? So let's take a look at what they submitted. And I'm just going to be clicking away here like crazy for a few seconds. You'll notice that it's pretty lengthy. Um, in fact, I couldn't fit it all as one static image. So like the others on the panel here, I also created you some animations so that you can hopefully get the experience. The goal of the email here is to send a monthly newsletter. They want to update their subscribers on new and upcoming events and projects from the organization. Their target audience that they send to regularly is their entire email list, which basically includes the actual clients, the family members of the clients, donors, art and merchandise buyers, and just general supporters, right? So they've got quite a kind of a broad list of people that they're sending out to. And what they've asked for us to kind of look at is, are there ways to optimize for personalization and to improve their click-through rates? So open rates on this particular send were good at 55%, but click-through rates were less than 1%.
Ooh.
Yikes. So we'll dig into this one a little bit further. So obviously some of the observations I just mentioned is length. So Megan, Danielle, what are your initial thoughts on longer messages like this?
Yeah, we're in the same boat
Hmm.
for both of our emails here. It's obviously lengthy. I think it can be really difficult when your audience criteria is super broad, right? You want to make sure you're including something for everyone, but I have a sneaking suspicion Mark is going to have some feedback about file size for this one as well.
Yeah, and I think sometimes with newsletters, lengthy can be fine. You just have to know your audience and make sure that they can still quickly and easily digest the main points.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it all comes down to kind of testing to see, what can resonate. So yeah, good good feedback, ladies. Thank you. So as you can see, the email has got a lot of different articles and events. Each has its own image, each has its own description, and each has its own call to action associated with it. So, my perspective on this is clearly they have got a ton of really good content that they want to share, but I think it makes it hard for the reader to really grasp what's the most important element to really action on. It's sent out once a month, so I propose testing a shorter version, right? Really drive the subscriber's attention to a specific event or an exhibit. Side note here for deliverability, if you have more frequent sends, that can be helpful, especially if the cadence and the volume are consistent. So um, just, I think Danielle, you mentioned this earlier, when we're designing, we've got to remember that we really have only got a few precious seconds to get people's attention.
And not a lot of real estate
Right.
anymore, right up at the top there. Yep.
Yeah, exactly right. So initially when I first looked at this, I was like, I don't even really know what to look at. Where am I supposed to focus, right? So I did land on their, get your tickets today CTA towards the top there. But there's a hyperlinked CTA under that image, and I completely missed it. So they did report that the majority of the clicks they did receive was on that get your tickets today CTA. So I guess that's good. For me personally, there are images of scenes from the Arts Center, which is it's featuring people, and I gravitate. I think it's human nature to gravitate to faces. Um, I also think we could probably benefit from a little color blocking here, and just really kind of direct the users to the CTAs. Um, the other ways, right, listed on the screen, give us some concise summaries, hook the subscribers and get them to click through to read more and understand more about whatever it is you're trying to share with them. Um, Obviously, we're trying to encourage that click. That's one of the things that they've asked us to really focus on here. Um, and of course, the mailbox providers really love it when your subscribers click through. So it's a win-win in that case. And then finally on this slide, I just wanted to point out that the volunteer section, it gets a little lost in the shuffle. So I imagine it has been overlooked by most subscribers, which is really a shame. Um, all right, so that's my sort of initial take on what was sent in. Um, Mark, I think you have got some input on image sizes themselves, right? So I'm going to go to the next slide.
Yeah, so one of the things people talk about when we're looking at image sizes in email is looking at individual images, but what's actually more important is the total size of all the images, all the assets that are downloaded. So that would also include any custom fonts. So the total image size for this email is 1.9 megabytes, which is a little on the large side. I'd like to sort of ideally see around 1 megabyte, maybe 1.5. Um, but yeah, there's some easy wins here. So this image, for example, I really like this image. It's cool painting. So I was like, all right, I want to feature this one. This image in the email, it's only ever rendered at 275 by 220 pixels, but the source image that it's pulling in from is 1200 by 960, and that file size is 433.9 kilobytes. So it's a quite a large image, and it's both in file size and in pixel size. So I've reduced it down to 550 by 440, which is still double the size it's actually rendered. So you still get that crispness and the retina screens of that crisp image coming through. But the file size I got down to 149. Still a little bit on the large side. You could compress it a little bit more, but because I think doing this to all the images, it's going to bring everything down quite a lot. So I think that's okay. And because we're looking at art, we want to make sure we've got very good quality images there. So yeah, I think going over all the images and just optimizing them, reducing the pixel size, and then running through some image compression as well could bring the total image size right down. And then that means the email loads faster and just works a lot smoother. It's much snappier all throughout.
Oh, snappier. I love that. That's great. Yeah, and this kind of harkens back to that initial question, right? Where do images fit into that overall? So thank you for mentioning that again. Okay. The current newsletter is combining abstract and documentaries type images. And you would think, right, that those different things would draw the reader's attention because they're different types, but oddly, it tends to confuse people because there's just not one main focus or area of interest. Everything just kind of blends together. So if you're contemplating reducing the overall newsletter size, it might help to just keep those styles separate, right? Or as their own message. Um, I always tell customers and people I talk to that my middle name should probably be Test. So test doing that to see what resonates with your specific audience, right? I took the liberty to mock something up that would sort of lean more into that documentary style for this main event. And you can see that I am suggesting the CTA stretches across the width of the message, which is better for accessibility too, by the way. More on that from Mark in a minute. And then I just try to incorporate some of the other suggestions, like making it bigger, slightly different shape than the other one. There's a little more urgent language here with secure your spot. And the dancer's hands do subtly point downwards towards that CTA. Anybody have a gut reaction to this?
I love drawing the eye. I think we've done a lot of predictive eye tracking on our side,
Mhm.
and I do know that when um, whoever is represented in the image is looking toward a call to action, we do see that CTA tend to light up a bit more, which
Mhm.
is just really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I like it too. I don't know, I think it's pretty. It's definitely it's very engaging, like the image alone, not just like call to actions and text, it's picking good imagery.
Mhm.
And it's just bright and inviting. So I like it.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies. Um, I think, Mark, you had some observations around the links in their newsletters. Do you want to take us through those?
Yeah, it's the same again as the previous email. The links weren't fully clickable. So it's just, yeah, only um, the red bit, the dark red around the text is clickable. Everything else isn't. And this can frustrate people if they try and click. They just assume it's not working and they won't keep trying. So that can, it can reduce clicks a little bit. Some people will just, keep trying or move the mouse until they see the icon change to be able to click. But yeah, it's just something definitely worth looking at. And there's a number of different ways to code links like this. I'd say avoid VML because that's very bad for accessibility. But otherwise, yeah, there's different ways. So if you look it up, and I've got stuff on my website if you wanted to look that way as well.
Oh, nice. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you tell me a little bit about a bulletproof? I think I've heard this years ago, a bulletproof button, basically.
Yeah, I I don't think any button's bulletproof.
Okay.
In email,
Hot take.
Yeah.
everything in email is a compromise. Everything in accessibility is a compromise. So nothing I would say is bulletproof, but there's generally style the A tag, style, and then that will be clickable. If that's what's clickable, and then don't put any block elements inside an A tag because that can break things as well. So
Mm,
avoid putting a table or a div or a heading inside an A tag. Just put that A tags around those, and then using padding or faux padding, which we were going to get technical about it, to create the space around it to make it a larger click area.
nice. Thank you for that. I am not a coder and I don't play one on TV at all. So, like, this is so interesting to me. So, thank you. One other thing that I thought about for events in particular is, to have that add to calendar button just to help people remember the event details. This is one that Litmus offers, and I like it because it adds that air of FOMO too by saying how many people have signed up to attend. Of course, you can do real-time polls and surveys, and I think Danielle maybe mentioned this either in a different session or earlier, where you can even say, "Hey, do you like this message or not?" And sometimes that can really be helpful. Okay, who remembers my middle name? Test. If you do have longer content and you want to maintain that longer content, that's fine. As Megan said earlier, sometimes it really does work for your audience. My recommendation around that would be just let's maybe draw the I in a Z or an F pattern. And I really love this example from Visit California because your eye just naturally jumps back and forth. And I think there's enough white space around the CTAs too. And I like that they're using different language in those call to actions. If we look at the original all the way over to the right again, I don't want to sound like I'm pulling it apart because it does have good balance and the text and image elements are legible to the reader. So I just think there's ways to optimize to guide the users to take the actions that we want them to take. All right. So the folks at Math and the Arts Access noted that their current sends are going out to all these different groups. So ideally, I would recommend they would tailor those sends accordingly, right? So that clients and their family receive specific messaging. You know, your donors and supporters get something different. You could encourage donors to just make a difference, right? Make another donation. You can base their asks based on their prior donations. For your buyers, your art and merchandise buyers, maybe somebody's only ever bought a print. Maybe they've bought multiple prints. So maybe on the next message to them, you would highlight a print. Certainly offer the other recommendations, but we know that that's where their interest lies. So it would be nice to kind of, focus on that for them. Personally, could talk for hours about personalization and segmentation.
I was going to say, I hate to be the teacher
But we're
who's
running
looking
out
at
of
the time
time.
here, but we have 5 minutes and
Oh my
we
goodness.
hate shortchange it. As you all can well see, that we could talk forever about emails. So I know Megan needs her turn. So
All
let us,
right, I will just fly through these and you all will get these slides at the end. So
Megan, challenge issued.
I can do this.
you got this. We're missing Mark's part too, but go for it, Megan.
There was a lot of repetition, same issues again.
Okay, yes.
And then heading structure, but yeah, carry on.
It's all good. I will keep this short and sweet, unlike my example here, which is long and sweet. So this is from the Regional Office of Education number 4, and it's a newsletter to build awareness about what they're doing, what's going on, across the schools within their region. Um, and I actually really like this email. I think the content is great. There's obviously room for improvement. My initial takeaway is that whoever created this is actually really excited about the content and they seem really enthusiastic about sharing the news and updates with their community, which I love. I just kind of like the personal nature of this. But of course, our job is to help optimize it and make sure that everything is still informative and quickly digestible. Um, and similar to what's been discussed earlier, before I jump into some examples I mocked up, um, if the issue is cadence, we can look at that. If the emails are too long, and if you're sending it once a month, try sending it twice a month. Consider your audience. Do they need all of this information? If it's already on your social media, maybe, direct people that way. Um, and I want to give Mark here a second to talk about the file size as well.
Yeah, so again, file size here is it's 92.2 kilobytes. So using some minify and CSS cleanup tools, 76.7, so not as much of a saving as it was on the other email, but still quite a bit. But then again, removing the data attributes, there's another 5 kilobytes of attributes added in, and there's a lot of redundant code, so inherit values. So font size inherit, color inherit on divs, which does nothing. Those are the default values. So that's just adding code with no benefits. So just removing those pieces is another 4 kilobytes we could save. So there's quite a lot of code cleanup that could be done in here. But just reviewing it, I think, is the key.
And like I said, it's hard to limit text when you're excited, but you can cut it down. So I played with this template. I started with the first quick win here, which is reducing the text. So if we click to that example, you can see I just shortened the text and you can already see the email just got a lot shorter. I played a little bit with the code. I did stuff like moving the IDPH logo to the side so it's not bulky right below the text there. Another thing we can do is crop the images more. There's a lot of extra head space and on these images. You can take the headline, like the Summit Academy Host Army Field Day, move that up into that empty image space. And that also just kind of helps clean things up a little bit. And, it could be part of the image. Just if you have your headline as an overlay, just make sure the font size is big enough that on mobile, it's still legible and accessible.
Yeah, I like the changes that you've made here, Megan. Looks great.
Thank you. I like to play around sometimes. And we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so here looking at image sizes again, it's 2.6 megabytes, which is pretty big. But one thing I noticed on this email is this image, the original image is in PNG, which is the wrong format for a photo. It's PNGs are good for graphics, like when you've got fewer colors. For photos, you want to be using JPEG. The Interestingly, the CDN, which is delivering this image, is converting it to a WebP, which is compressing it a bit, but it's still, because it's in that original PNG format, it's not reducing the file size down much. So I just took this image and converted it straight to a JPEG, and it brought it down to 117 kilobytes, and then I ran it through some compression down to 96. So that's a huge saving on just that one image.
I went too
Um,
fast, sorry.
That's cool. I'm
no,
done.
no, you're
Well,
fine.
I was
You're right.
actually
That's
gonna say,
fine.
just because I know we are at time, I have had a preview of this. I would love to hop to actually the next slide. I saw in the chat somebody called out color contrast as being an issue for this particular email. And I just want to make sure we touch on that before we close out for the day.
Nice. So it's one beyond this one then, huh?
That is
All
right. One
right,
more to go.
let's go. There it is.
So yeah,
Yes.
the color contrast on this, it's for WCAG AA standard, we want it to be 4.5. For AAA, we want it to be 7. And you see the numbers there, it's all quite a lot below that. Sort of 1.79, 2.37, 1.93. For me personally, the white text on the orange, the bottom example, is the hardest one to read. The blue one is under the new algorithm that may be coming in to replace the color contrast algorithm. The blue one does score a bit higher than that, but it's still out of range. It still needs to be improved on there.
And I think we're almost making it, guys. We have one more slide left. Bear with us. You can tell we are excited about email. Mark, do you want to give us a quick overview of this before we part?
Yeah, sure. So very quickly, looking at all the links in this email, I pulled out all the links in a links menu. So if you're using a screen reader, that's a common way to navigate. You just get all the links in a links menu. You can just navigate through them. So things like learn more are not very descriptive. So you need a little bit more information there. The banner image on this email doesn't have any alt text. And when a link has no alt text, there's nothing to say what that link is. If you look at that piece of code on the left, there's no information there to tell me where that link's taking me. I mean, you've got the URL, but it's not actually giving you that information of where the link's going. And then, yeah, a couple of other things we're seeing, like the alt text, I think is just coming from image file names. So you've got this sort of 1 1 at the end of it and things like that. And one which is a bit weird is this Rockford Rescue Mission link right at the footer is broken up into two links. The R is on one link and the Oxford Rescue Mission is in another one. I assume somebody hit enter, broke it onto a new line, then backspace to put it back, and it just kept it as two links at some point. But little things like this are very easy to miss. But doing like a accessibility QA does help pull these things out.
Well, I wanted to give, I know, thank you everybody for bearing with us. I have been looking at the participant count, and so many of you stuck with us for these extra 3 minutes. Thank you to Julie, Mark, and Megan for this amazing overview and these great optimization tips. And I actually see we have some of the people who submitted these emails here with us in the chat. Thank you so much. We love doing this, and we hope you found it valuable. And we hope you enjoy the rest of Litmus Live. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.